It is time. In just a moment, we have joining us Matt Kean, MP, the New South Wales Minister for Energy and the Treasurer of New South Wales. Matt entered Parliament back in 2011. He was elevated to the Cabinet in 2017. He was appointed Minister for Innovation and Better Regulation. And then following the 2019 election here in New South Wales, he was appointed Minister for Energy and Environment. Since that appointment, Matt has added substantial expanses of land to the New South Wales National Parks estate, beating and then doubling acquisition targets, which will mean an extra 400,000 hectares will be added by the end of this year. He is an unspoken critic. Unspoken? Did I say unspoken? Outspoken. He's an outspoken critic of, no politicians are unspoken, they are outspoken. He's an outspoken critic of climate denialism. He's campaigned for greater action on climate change, particularly in the wake of the 2019-2020 bushfires. And in 2020, he delivered the biggest renewable energy policy in Australia's history, the Electricity Infrastructure Roadmap, a 20-year plan for New South Wales energy infrastructure. And just last year, Matt was appointed Treasurer, so he now has the money to make this all happen. As you will no doubt hear, Matt is passionate about delivering reform. And as Environment Minister and now Treasurer, Matt has been the driving force behind New South Wales' strong emissions abatement target of 50% by 2030. Now, I'm not joking when I say we didn't actually need to reach out and encourage and ask Matt to speak. He reached out to us to speak. He is genuinely someone who is here because he wants to be here on a weekend. No persuasion was needed, and we really very much appreciate that. Outside of work, so when he's not busy giving Dominic his weekly pocket money, Matt enjoys spending time with his young son Tom, and that is one of Matt's many reasons to save the planet and do his bit. Together with their rescue turtle, Trevor the turtle. Some people have rescue dogs, some people have got COVID pets. Matt and his family have Trevor the turtle. As I said, we're delighted to have the Minister here with us today to chat about 2030 and maybe turtle rescues. Please welcome to the scene the evergreen Matt Kean, MP. Please welcome Matt, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can I firstly begin by joining Jess in acknowledging country and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and remind everyone that the land we're gathered on was, is and always will be Aboriginal land. Can I thank you so much for the invitation to join you at the summit. We gather at a very difficult time for our state here in New South Wales. The floods that have ravaged large swathes of northern New South Wales, parts of Sydney and elsewhere are taking a hugely distressing toll. Lives have been lost, businesses and homes have been destroyed. As a government, we will continue to mobilise every resource that we can to help those in need. Right now, the priority is on managing the immediate impacts and providing rescue and relief operations. But the focus will very soon switch to recovery. It will inevitably be a tough and long road to rebuild lives, livelihoods, and entire communities. But we will be there every step of the way. Observing these sad events, however, I'm struck by how much we continue to see the best in our people. The bravery of our emergency service personnel is nothing short of remarkable. It is worth remembering that so many of them are volunteers. They simply want to help their friends and neighbours in a moment of need. But we also saw everyday citizens pitching in, whether they use their own boats to ferry people to safety, or opened their homes to someone who has lost their own, or made meals for strangers at emergency centres. They made their own contribution. Now, my question is whether or not we are doing everything that we can to avoid the worst climate impacts. The flood has been described as unprecedented for good reason, but it comes only a year after the similar devastating floods hit the northeast of New South Wales. and a little more than 2 years after the worst bushfires that this state has ever seen. Then, we saw people huddled in coastal towns framed by blood-red skies. Now we see people scrambling to rooftops or any piece of higher ground that they can find. The forecasts of climate scientists about the prevalence of extreme weather events, made for decades now, have been sadly vindicated. So how do we summons all of the capacity for ingenuity available to us to protect our citizens from the catastrophic effects of climate change? This was the challenge that I turned my mind to in 2019, when I began work to transform our environmental and climate policy here in New South Wales. On a daily basis, I saw people determined to choose their cause and their voice. Sometimes this was a local land care group, volunteering their time for a small but precious piece of their local bushland. On other occasions, it was investors, technologists, climate scientists, energy producers, environmentalists, capitalists, and farmers. Now, we didn't always agree on every element, but because we had a shared understanding of the goal and the faith in the power of ideas, we made enormous strides. We did so by embarking on a shared enterprise. We discarded the nonsense that said acting on climate change was an existential choice between our economy and our environment. The fact is, we can enhance our environment, our way of life, and our prosperity by actually taking action on climate change. In New South Wales, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We have legislated with cross-party support. All the major political parties got together to put the interests of our state, our country, and our planet first. And we legislated the biggest renewable energy investment plan in the nation. And as a consequence, we're unlocking $37 billion worth of private investment and have accelerated our path to net zero. We're also guaranteeing cheaper, more reliable, and also clean energy that's going to turbocharge our industry right here, creating new jobs and prosperity in a way that we've never seen before. That's what small businesses and households want in this state. They don't want ideology. They want a prosperous and resilient economy built on productivity and innovation that also reflects our commitment to a more sustainable planet. Taking action on climate change is an example of how investing in a healthy environment supports a healthy and sustainable economy. The reality is that our economic prosperity does not come at the expense of the environment. It absolutely depends on it. Our farmers depend on predictable weather patterns for their crops. They are at their best when they're free from drought, flood, hail, and disease. Our workers do their best when our summer's not shrouded in smoke. Our economic prosperity is built on the strength of our society. Our commerce depends on our security and our safety. Our contracts depend on the rule of law and a judicial system that is free from corruption. And that's why we need strong anti-corruption bodies, not just at the state level, but also at the national level. Our businesses depend on an educated society, filled with aspiration, creativity, determination, and the skills and expertise to make their aspirations a reality. Our workers depend on a transport system that sees them spend more time plying their trade at home with their family rather than sitting in traffic. Our economy is at its best when our society affords every person the opportunity to contribute to our country and pursue a career no matter the wealth of their parents, the colour of their skin, the God they choose to worship, or, importantly, their gender. Just like good climate policy is good for our economy, good social policy is also good economic policy. Addressing the structural barriers to unleashing the economic potential of every New South Wales person is going to be my focus as the Treasurer of New South Wales. And there is no bigger structural barrier to our prosperity than addressing the issue of that faced by half our population. I want to make sure the little girl born today is able to see the same opportunities as the little boy born in the hospital room next door to them. That hasn't been always the case for their mothers or their grandmothers before them. Women are underrepresented in our trades, our offices, our boardrooms, and so many aspects of our society. Female workplace participation rates are about 10% lower than that of men, and they're more likely to work part-time. The most recent New South Wales intergenerational report found the economy would actually be 8% larger by 2060 if women's participation reached parity with men. That's the equivalent of household incomes being $22,000 per annum higher than in today's dollars if we could address this inequity. We need to remove these barriers because to succeed as a state, we need all our best and brightest having the genuine option to participate fully in the economy. That's why I've recently commissioned a Women's Economic Opportunities Review, chaired by the amazing Sam Mostyn. Its mandate is broad because we've got so much to do. The review will consider how to improve women's economic participation and security, including support for women as they enter, re-enter, and stay in the workplace. We want to enhance the gender mix across industries, unleash a new wave of female entrepreneurs, and increase workplace flexibility right across New South Wales. The review will span workplace equity, the gender pay gap, improving leadership opportunities, and the affordability, accessibility, and quality of childcare for parents. If we close those gaps across pay, opportunity, and participation, the legacy that we will leave will be immense. We can grow the economy, improve living standards, and boost lifetime earnings and financial security for women. And we can unlock the choice and opportunities that every single woman deserves. And that is the essence of my approach. To always ask, how can we mobilise our resources, our authority, and our capabilities in the name of a better society? Because that commitment to progress, that commitment to do good, depends on all of us. Every generation has had to rise to meet the challenges of their times. My grandparents' generation, they went off to war to fight fascism and tyranny, to stand up for the values of democracy, the rule of law, and equality of opportunity for everyone. My parents' generation, they fought for greater civil rights, greater Indigenous rights, and greater women's rights. The challenge of our times, the challenge for our generation, is how do we protect our environment but still increase living standards for everyone? How to ensure that everyone who wants to contribute to our economy and our society is able to do so equitably. Just like the generations before us have stood up and met the challenges of their times to leave our society in a better place than they found it, so too must we rise to the challenge ahead of us. And in doing so, we can not only leave our state, our society, and our country a better, stronger, and more prosperous place for everyone, but we can bequeath to the next generation a better world, a better planet, and a better place for everyone to live in. Thank you so much for your commitment to those objectives, and I cannot wait to work with you to turn them into a reality. Thank you so much. Thank you.